Tonight, we're stepping back into the sun-bleached, mesmerizing world of ancient Egypt, a land of towering pyramids, sacred temples, and medical practices that range somewhere between genius and complete guesswork. Forget Tylenol, turmeric shots, or your favorite herbal tea. Here, the real remedies were poppy juice, blue lotus wine, and whatever your local priest could grind, mix, or bless behind the temple walls. Imagine it, a civilization obsessed with health, healing, and the occasional hallucinatory shortcut to enlightenment. Their pharmacists were priests, their clinics were shrines, and their medicine cabinets looked more like spice racks with attitude. Ever wonder what counted as a prescription in 1450 BCE? Maybe a little honey mixed with crocodile-dung, a handful of herbs, and a prayer to Ra? So picture yourself waking up on the banks of the Nile. The sun is already blazing, the air smells faintly of fish and incense, and someone's goat has decided your home is a public space. You're dusty, dazed, and only half sure which God to thank for still being alive. But don't worry, you're about to discover what it really meant to get medical treatment in the land of the pharaohs. The first thing you notice after the goat chews affectionately on your foot is that your bed is not so much a bed as a woven mat, probably made of reeds pulled from the riverbank, and it's about as soft as a pile of flattened kindling. Your back cracks as you sit up. The walls around you are mud brick decorated with faint, hopeful paintings of gods who probably have better sleeping arrangements than you do. If you squint, you can see tiny trails of ants making their daily commute along the windowsill. They seem more organized than you feel. The floor is a patchwork of sand, faded footprints, and the occasional bit of papyrus that your neighbor swore was a receipt, but you're starting to think is just an old shopping list. Overhead, sunlight knives through a gap in the door. Dust motes float through the air, dancing above yesterday's laundry. A linen kilt that hasn't been properly washed since the last Nile flood. You take a deep breath, inhale the distinctive scent of damp earth, river water, and optimism, and try to remember which area you're in. Congratulations. It's ancient Egypt, roughly 1450 BC, and you're a perfectly average person, meaning your health insurance consists of luck, home remedies, and a cousin who knows a guy who once met a priest. There is no hot shower, no phone, and absolutely no skip intro button for the day ahead. You reach for your water jug and hope it's not just a decorative vase this time. The water is room temperature, slightly murky, and tastes like last week's reeds, but it beats dehydration. Modern bottled water, not invented yet. And you're grateful because even the Nile, majestic as it is, doesn't come with a Brita filter. Breakfast is leftover tilapia, served cold with a hunk of bread that could double as a construction material. There's a side of onions, mostly for flavor, mostly for keeping curses away, and probably for scaring off would-be in-laws. Your teeth complain, but you soldier on. In ancient Egypt, breakfast is less the most important meal of the day and more the only thing stopping you from fainting in the sunday. The goat is now investigating your medicine basket. Yes, you have one. Every home does a woven collection of jars, bundles, and things that look suspiciously like weeds, but are described as powerful remedies by your grandmother, who is convinced she knows more than the local physician. There's a dried blue lotus flower used for everything from headaches to house parties, a lump of honey, a few poppy pods for emergencies or really, really bad Mondays, and a collection of animal bones that no one will explain. Your neighbor, a cat, pokes his head through the doorway. He's holding a bundle of herbs and what might be a frog. He asks if you want to trade. He's got something for the nerves. You politely decline. Last time you tried his medicine, you ended up singing hymns to Batet for 3 hours and woke up convinced your sandals could talk. Outside, the world is already alive. The street, it's just a dusty path with aspirations, is buzzing with vendors, kids, and the eternal argument over who stole whose date cakes. You hear a priest chanting somewhere, probably blessing a new shipment of fish or banishing a particularly stubborn cold. You look down at your own hands, dusty, slightly scratched, and carrying a new splinter. In a few hours, you'll be carrying baskets or hauling water, maybe building something for a minor official who thinks he's the reincarnation of R.A. But for now, you're just a newly awakened Egyptian armed with a basket of hope, a handful of herbs, and the strange certainty that whatever comes your way today, someone in your village has a remedy for it. You step outside, squint into the golden morning, and breathe in the possibility and the pollen. Welcome to another day in ancient Egypt. You're awake, you're alive, and the adventure starts now. If you're lucky, you'll only need the honey and not the poppy before bedtime. There's a certain type of chaos that only happens in the ancient Egyptian marketplace, and you're in the middle of it. The air is thick with dust, chatter, and the unmistakable scent of onions. Somewhere, a donkey is making its opinion known, and you briefly consider whether that's actually your stomach. Today's mission is clear. You need something for the ache in your lower back. The one you earned yesterday hauling baskets of bricks for a supervisor who believes ergonomic advice is an insult to the gods. You make your way down the street. Well, a path that's seen more animal traffic than human. On your right is the scrib's house. On your left, the neighbor with the suspiciously large cat. And right in between, sandwiched by shouting vendors and a teenage boy selling fresh river fish. Don't ask. You find your target, the local apothecary. Now, don't picture a sleek, white-walled pharmacy with neat rows of pills. This is more like a mud brick wizard's den, equal parts medicine, superstition, and whatever your apothecary found in the backyard this morning. The shop is dim, cool, and smells like a combination of old bread, ancient incense, and the inside of a frog. Jars line the shelves, some labeled, most not. Some look like dry plants. Others might be the reason your cousin claims to have seen a crocodile blink at him. The man himself, Sand, is a legend in your part of the village. He's equal parts healer, gossip, and purveyor of everything your mother told you not to eat. He's wearing a robe with suspicious stains and a headdress that's seen better centuries. He greets you with a sly grin and the sort of wink that makes you wonder if you're about to be cured or cursed. Something for the back, he says, already rummaging through baskets and jars. Sinab's consultation is more of an interrogation. He asks if you've offended any gods lately, if you've fallen on hard times, and if you've been eating enough garlic. He thinks garlic fixes most things, including your love life. He squints at your posture and, for a moment, seems genuinely concerned, then distracted by a cricket crawling across his table, which he gently flicks into a nearby jar. Protein, he says, as if this is perfectly normal. The wall behind him is a masterclass in chaos. Bundles of dried herbs, suspiciously knobby roots, a clay statue of a baboon. For wisdom, or maybe just company, and a few ominous stains no one discusses, there's an entire shelf devoted to resins and gums, and myrrh, frankincense, and something called sweet-smelling stuff that frankly smells like expired honey. Sim's approach to medicine is a blend of science, religion, and aggressive optimism. He believes in the healing power of blue lotus for pain, dreams, and the occasional existential crisis, and poppy juice, which he says cures everything except bad luck. He also believes in the power of words, scribbling protective spells on scraps of papyrus and tucking them into medicine packets. According to Sinab, a headache isn't truly gone until it's been outwitted, outlasted, and if necessary, threatened with holy geometry. He hands you a bundle of willow bark, a vial of honey, and inexplicably a dried frog tied with a reed. Just in case, he says. You're not sure what for, but you nod. It seems polite. You glance around and see the village's entire spectrum of health complaints represented. Someone with a swollen foot, a woman clutching her stomach, an old man who claims to be 109 and wants to live forever. Everyone leaves with a bundle, a story, and maybe a placebo effect powered by Sinab's unwavering confidence. You pay Cinabri onions and a promise to tell your aunt that the rash is probably just the weather. He winks again, hands you a talisman shaped like a fish, and tells you to avoid arguing with bakers, at least for the next 3 days. You walk out clutching your new medicine, feeling both skeptical and strangely hopeful. Maybe it's the honey. Maybe it's the power of suggestion. Or maybe it's just the undeniable charm of Egypt's favorite drug dealer. Either way, your back still hurts, but your spirit feels lighter and your pockets are a little emptier. That's the ancient Egyptian apothecary experience. Half science, half sorcery, and entirely unforgettable. Tonight is special. You've survived another day under the merciless Egyptian sun, hauling, bartering, sweating, and dodging both supervisors and mildly judgmental ibises. The moon is high. The river's cool breath moves through the reeds, and the whole village is glowing with that peculiar kind of excitement that usually means a festival, or at least someone finally caught a big enough fish to brag about. Whatever the reason, you're here, hungry for distraction, maybe a little bit bored, and extremely curious about the drink being passed around. You spot the blue lotus, Nile, floating lazily in a jug of sweet homemade wine. It looks innocent enough. Pale blue petals, golden heart, the sort of flower that would look equally at home, tucked behind the ear of a priestess or pressed between the pages of a very apologetic love letter. But you know its reputation. This is no ordinary garden weed. Blue lotus is famous, whispered about in the market, painted on the walls of tombs, and rumored to unlock doors in your mind you never knew existed. Someone hands you a cup. The wine is a little cloudy, the flower scent faint but unmistakable, earthy, sweet with a hint of something you can't quite place. You take a sip just to be polite and immediately understand why pharaohs, priests, and the more adventurous scribe down the road all keep a stash. The taste is pleasant, floral, and oddly calming, like sipping on a bouquet that's decided to move in and redecorate your insides. The effect doesn't hit you like a hammer. This isn't modern party chemistry. It's slow, subtle, a velvet fog that slides gently across your mind. The world softens at the edges. The laughter of your neighbors drifts by on the breeze, sounding slightly farther away and much, much funnier than usual. You watch a group of children chasing a goose, and for a moment, you're convinced you understand the goose's perspective on life. Spoiler, it's mostly about bread. No one really knows how Blue Lotus works. The priest claims it's sacred, a gift from the gods, meant to connect your soul to the world of dreams and spirits. The village healer says it's good for pain, stress, and anyone trying to forget their last run-in with the tax collector. The scribe, always suspicious of anything he can't translate, thinks it's just an excuse for adults to behave like children and not get scolded. But for tonight, none of that matters. You're reclining on a woven mat by the Nile. The stars are spinning in lazy circles overhead, and the river sounds suspiciously like it's whispering the answers to questions you haven't even asked yet. The village musicians play their flutes and drums, and the notes twirl in the air, looping through your thoughts and turning worries into something almost musical. Someone passes you another cup, and this time you drink a little more bravely. Colors seem brighter, laughter seems deeper, and for a moment, you're convinced you can taste the moon. You notice the priests are not above joining in. In fact, they look suspiciously relaxed tonight, chanting a little slower, swaying a little more. The local cat, always a harsh critic, curls up beside you and purrs as if it too has figured out the secret of the Blue Lotus. Every celebration has its rituals, and here, the Blue Lotus is more than just a party trick. It's tradition, therapy, a little rebellion against the daily grind. It's the closest thing to a vacation anyone in ancient Egypt will ever get, and it comes with the added bonus of making your mother's cooking taste almost palatable. By the end of the night, you're lighter, calmer, and only mildly worried about the poem you recited to that attractive stranger across the fire. Will you remember the words tomorrow? Unlikely. Will you remember the feeling? Absolutely. As the festival winds down, you tuck a blue lotus petal into your hair, knowing tomorrow will come with sand, sweat, and maybe a little headache. But tonight, you're dreaming wide awake with the Nile to carry you gently home. Let's talk pain relief, ancient Egyptian style, because sooner or later, living in a world built out of stone and stubborn optimism, you're going to need it. Maybe you've thrown your back out hauling bricks, or you lost an argument with a very sharp fishbone at breakfast. Perhaps you've got a tooth that aches in time with the beating of the sun, or just the daily existential horror of pyramid construction. Whatever it is, you're feeling it, and so is everyone else within a 5-cubit radius. So, where do you go when you need something stronger than honey and a polite spell? You head back to your trusty apothecary, Simb, who has a special shelf for the tough stuff, the poppy pods. These are not your average garden variety. No, these are big, fat, mysterious bulbs, carefully harvested and dried in the hottest sun, sitting in a basket marked with a symbol that means handle with optimism, caution, and only after you've tried literally everything else. The poppy Papers omniferum is the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a miracle and a minor local controversy. Seneb swears by it for the worst pain, the oldest wounds, and those days when you're convinced your neighbor's goat has cursed you. He says, winking as he grinds a tiny pod into a sticky brownish paste. There's no prescription pad, just tradition, trial, and a little fear. The recipe is simple. Scrape the milky resin from the pod. Let it dry. Then mix it into wine, honey, or if you're unlucky, a lump of bread, so hard you could use it as a doorstop. For a bad tooth, Seneb packs a wad of opium paste against the offending mare and tells you to keep your mouth shut for a few hours for muscle aches. It's a drink, just enough to take the edge off and maybe send you drifting somewhere far from your responsibilities. You take your first dose, and the results are frankly incredible. Your pain floats away like a forgotten tax debt. The constant throb in your jaw vanishes. The ache in your shoulder dissolves. The only thing left is a soft, fuzzy feeling that reminds you of falling asleep on a boat. Or maybe that one time you dozed off during a particularly long festival sermon. Everything is softer, quieter, and for once you can focus on something other than how much your back hates you. Opium isn't just for peasants and pyramid haulers. Everyone uses it. Farmers, scribes, even priests with chronic incantation elbow. The pharaoh's doctors are especially fond of the stuff, prescribing it for migraines, insomnia, and the aftermath of royal banquets that got a little too enthusiastic. In the medical papyri, poppy is hailed as a gift from the gods, a gentle hand for the suffering, and a necessary evil for the unlucky. Of course, there are warnings. Seneb is careful not to give too much to anyone, except maybe that one neighbor who never stops complaining about his knees. You've heard stories. The old scribe who took a bit too much and spent 3 days convinced he was a heron. The temple worker who forgot how to stand up for an entire afternoon. Ancient Egyptians know the line between healing and hilarious public nap is a thin one. Still, opium is a revolution. It's the original painkiller, the world's oldest chill pill, the answer to problems you didn't even know you had. It's comfort in a cup, a balm for the body, and the one thing that can make even the harshest desert day seem manageable. As the poppy haze fades and the pain begins its slow, inevitable return, you thank your ancestors for figuring this one out. You might not have modern anesthesia, but you've got something better than chewing on a stick and hoping for the best. And as you drift off pain-free, you wonder what the future holds. Maybe someday people will look back and marvel at your bravery, your resilience, and your willingness to trust a flower with a name that means sleep. For now, you're just grateful to feel nothing at all, except maybe a little pride in being ahead of your time. Let's set the scene. It's sunrise on the banks of the Nile. The air is still cool. The flies are already awake, and so are you barely. Your eyelids are sandpaper, your mouth is dry, and your stomach is making sounds that would frighten away a crocodile. Time for breakfast. But in ancient Egypt, That doesn't mean toast and coffee. No, it means a sturdy hunk of bread, a lump of goat cheese if you're lucky, and a tall foamy cup of, wait for it, beer. That's right. Beer is not just for celebrating the harvest, or for drowning your sorrows after an unfortunate run-in with a bureaucrat. It's a staple of the Egyptian breakfast table. Children drink it. Priests drink it. Even your grandmother, who claims to hate this stuff, has been known to pour herself a cup for medicinal reasons. In this world, beer isn't a vice, it's a vitamin. This is not the beer you know today. Forget about golden lagers and hoppy IPAs. Egyptian beer is thick, cloudy, and loaded with bits of bread. It's a little sour, a little sweet, and definitely chewy enough to count as both a beverage and a meal. Some days it feels less like drinking and more like performing a complicated act of faith, trusting that whatever's floating in your cup is mostly grain and not last night's wandering bug. You pour your first cup, watching the foam settle like a tiny personal Nile flood. The taste is interesting. If you've ever wanted to know what liquid porridge feels like at room temperature, congratulations. But before you turn up your nose, remember this is the cornerstone of Egyptian health and happiness. Your body needs it. Your soul, according to your local priest, needs it even more. Beer in ancient Egypt is practically a medical treatment. Got a headache? Drink beer. Stomach trouble? More beer. Bitten by a scorpion? Cursed by a neighbor? Or just generally unimpressed with life? Beer, beer, beer. It's prescribed by doctors, recommended by elders, and occasionally delivered as a peace offering by neighbors who are still apologizing for the goat incident. Even the pharaoh's court is in on it. Royal physicians prescribe beer mixed with herbs for fever, with honey for cough, and with mysterious powders for whatever else ails you. Some medical papyri read less like pharmacy instructions and more like a collection of beer recipes for every known problem. Ailment fatigue. Prescription. Take 1 jar of beer, recite the spell of renewal, and try not to nap in the temple courtyard. But the real magic of beer is hydration, sort of Nile water, while picturesque, is full of things that will send you running for the nearest latrine. So, brewing beer doubles as a safety precaution. The fermentation kills off most of what's dangerous, and you get the added bonus of a little morning cheerfulness. Even children drink what's called small beer, which is low in alcohol and high in my parents told me to. You're not just drinking for fun. You're drinking for survival. And it's not just for emergencies, festivals, funerals, building projects, and tax day. Beer is the one thing you can count on to show up, even when your paycheck does not. Workers are sometimes paid in beer, a fringe benefit that helps numb the pain of pyramid construction and makes your boss's bad jokes just a little more tolerable. Sometimes the line between medicine and recreation gets blurry, especially after your third cup. The stories get taller, the laughter gets louder, and suddenly someone is challenging the village priest to a dance-off. And if you're worried about the hangover, sin, your apothecary has a beer for that too. So, as you sip your frothy breakfast, remember, you're following in the footsteps of pharaohs and peasants alike. Beer is your daily dose of health, hope, and just enough confusion to make ancient Egypt a little more tolerable. Drink up. It's doctor's orders. Medicine in ancient Egypt is a complicated business. It's not just about herbs, honey, or whatever cub can dig up from his garden. It's about the gods, the spirits, and the fine art of convincing the universe to cut you a little slack. Because when you get sick in this land, you don't just visit a doctor. You enter the world of priest-physicians, sacred spells, and prescriptions that sound suspiciously like grocery lists for the afterlife. Picture this. You wake up sneezing again. Your nose is stuffy. Your head feels like it's full of baked mud, and your neighbor is already whispering that you might have offended the household gods. In ancient Egypt, nothing is ever just a cold. It's a message, a sign, a curse, or possibly revenge from a neighbor you forgot to invite to last week's beer breakfast. You're not taking any chances. It's time to see the priest. The temple is cool and dark. filled with the smoky aroma of incense and the soft whisper of prayers. Statues of the gods watch from the shadows, judging your posture and possibly your haircut. You kneel in front of the priest, a man whose job description includes everything from serves raw to occasionally yells at frogs. He listens gravely as you list your symptoms, nods thoughtfully, and asks a few questions, some about your health, some about your spiritual hygiene. Have you recently insulted a crocodile, skipped your daily offering, argued with your mother-in-law? Every possibility is on the table. Diagnosis complete. The priest reaches for his papyrus scrolls. Some are medical, packed with practical remedies. Grind this. Mix with honey. Apply to sore spot. Try not to die. Others are brimming with spells and prayers. Ancient poetry meant to convince whichever god is currently in charge of noses to show you mercy. Sometimes the cure is a pus. Sometimes it's a chant repeated 3 times while hopping on your left foot. The line between science and superstition is thinner than your patience during hay fever season. The priest might send you home with a basket of herbs, a chunk of natron, and a tiny amulet shaped like a falcon. He'll also scroll a spell on a scrap of papyrus for you to wear in your clothing just to make sure you're covered on both the physical and metaphysical fronts. Because in Egypt, nothing is ever just a headache. It's always spiritual, physical, and a little bit personal. Some prescriptions are creative. You might get advice like sleep facing the north, avoid lentils, and don't look directly at the moon for 3 nights. Or recite this in Thoth. Mix blue lotus with beer and sprinkle the mixture under your bed. Does it work? Sometimes placebo effect is powerful, especially when everyone around you believes in it too. Priest-physicians are the ultimate multitaskers. They treat your body, soothe your spirit, and remind you to keep up with your temple donations. Some even double as local celebrities, rumored to cure blindness, turn away evil spirits, or win at dice thanks to divine intervention. It's an odd comfort knowing that if all else fails, someone can at least threaten your germs with a very well-written curse. Of course, not everyone is convinced. The local scribe likes to argue that science and logic are better than spells, and the apothecary occasionally mutters about herbal realism. But even the skeptics keep their lucky charms handy, just in case. By the time you leave the temple, you're carrying a collection of potions, a new spell, and maybe just a little more hope than you had an hour ago. If nothing else, you have the reassurance that in ancient Egypt, your health is in the hands of people who never met a symptom they couldn't negotiate with one way or another. And tomorrow, if your cold is still hanging on, well, maybe it's time for another offering and another round of spells just to be safe. Let's be honest. Ancient Egyptian medicine is nothing if not adventurous. If you've ever stared at the back of a modern medicine bottle and thought, there is no way this many ingredients should go in my body, just wait until you see what's on offer along the Nile. Because sometimes in Egypt, the cure is almost as alarming as the disease. Today, you're dealing with a delicate issue. Maybe it's a stomach ache. Maybe it's something itchier. Or maybe you just mentioned prevention in the presence of your elderly aunt, and now she's got opinions. Either way, you're headed back to Sinab's apothecary where the jars are strange, the smells are stranger, and the remedies. Well, let's just say you don't want to ask too many questions. Sinab greets you with a knowing look. "Ah, I have just the thing," he exclaims before producing a small, tightly wrapped bundle. He unrolls it with a flourish, revealing a dark, crumbly substance and an aroma that could clear a banquet hall. "Crocodile-dung," he announces as if unveiling a rare jewel. "Very powerful, used for everything from wounds to more private matters." You hesitate, thinking maybe you'd rather have the stomach ache. But seen as persuasive. The gods provided crocodiles for a reason. He insists, not quite making eye contact. Crocodile-dung was considered a versatile remedy. It's used in picuses for wounds, slathered gingerly on rashes, and in one of history's boldest acts of optimism, even mixed with other ingredients to serve as ancient birth control. Imagine the conversation with your partner. Just trust me, this works. Also, don't ask why I smell like the world's angriest riverbank. It's creative, it's resourceful, and most importantly, it's definitely a conversation starter at dinner parties. And crocodile-dung isn't alone in the ancient medicine cabinet. There's a whole array of daring remedies for every ailment you can name, and some you hope never to experience. Take lizard blood. Good for headaches, if you believe your neighbor. Burnt donkey hair, supposed to ward off fevers. Mouse paste, a delicacy for wounds that refuse to heal, or for anyone who wants their injury to also smell like a mouse. It's not all animal-based. Sometimes you're offered a nice mixture of honey and grease for your cough, or a bread and milk pus for a bad bruise. There's even a treatment for baldness involving ground-up lettuce, and you guessed it, more animal fat. You'd think Egyptians had a secret bet going to see who could put the weirdest thing on their scalp and still keep a straight face. And yet, some of these ancient remedies work. Honey, as it turns out, is naturally antiseptic. Certain plant oils really do soothe skin. Even the much maligned crocodile-dung, while not recommended by modern science, was at least dry and absorbent, possibly keeping wounds protected from infection. Sometimes gross is just ahead of its time and not quite in the right direction. Of course, not every experiment is a winner. There are warnings. Don't put lizard blood in your eyes. Don't try to heal a broken bone with burnt goat horn. And if someone suggests you eat pickled frog, well, maybe just live with the cough for another day. The papyri are full of crossed-out recipes and frustrated notes that probably translate as never again. Still, there's something charming about the ancient Egyptian willingness to try anything once. They weren't afraid to get creative, to trust in the natural world and the supernatural, and to put their health on the line for the possibility of relief. It's medicine as adventure with a little bit of bravado and a lot of hope. So as you apply your crocodile-dung pus, breathe through your mouth and hope for the best. Remember, history's greatest remedies sometimes come in the weirdest packages, and at least you'll have a story to tell at the next beer breakfast. You got a headache. Not just any headache. The kind that feels like a team of pyramid workers is building a new monument behind your eyes. Maybe it's from a long day under the sun. Maybe it's from the festival's blue lotus aftermath. Or maybe it's just from realizing you've agreed to babysit your neighbor's triplets while their parents are at a very important frog race. Whatever the cause, your skull is pounding, and the usual solutions, beer, sleep, or pretending you're a statue, aren't cutting it. Enter willow bark. Ancient Egypt's answer to I just can't today. Before there was aspirin, before pharmacies, before anyone put fast relief on a box, there was the humble willow tree growing along the Nile and quietly plotting its medical takeover. Egyptians noticed something. People who chewed on strips of willow seemed less likely to throw pottery during family arguments. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was the gods. Or maybe it was chemistry before anyone had the word for chemistry. You don't go to Sind, the apothecary, for this one. Today, you go directly to the source. There's a patch of willows by the riverbank, swaying gently and probably snickering at your headache. You snap off a young twig. Sind insists the younger the better, and strip away the bark, which is a pleasing shade of pain relief beige. It doesn't look like much. It definitely doesn't look like a miracle. But you're desperate, and desperation is history's greatest motivator. Chewing willow bark is not glamorous. It's fibrous, a little bitter, and you spend the first 5 minutes picking bits out of your teeth. You wonder if this is what chewing on optimism tastes like. The bitterness, though, is a clue. Hidden within the bark is salicin, the same stuff that would later become aspirin, humanity's go-to for headaches, fevers, and the realization that you left your only clean tunic in the rain. The effect is slow, gentle, almost suspiciously so. You sit by the river, watching as the pain behind your eyes starts to fade, or at least becomes something you can ignore with the help of a passing ibis, and the faint hope that the triplets will sleep all afternoon. The willow's relief is subtle, but real, a gradual lifting of the fog, a gentle reminder that nature sometimes knows what it's doing, even if you don't. Egyptian healers aren't content with just chewing twigs, though. They grind willow bark into powder, mix it into drinks, or mash it up for pick uses. There are recipes for every occasion. Headaches, joint pain, even swelling from an overly enthusiastic run-in with a camel. Some scrolls recommend combining willow with honey, of course, or with a splash of beer, double, of course, to make the bitterness easier to swallow. The result, something that tastes like hope mixed with regret, but with undeniable results. The local priest, ever wary of new trends, claims the willow is sacred, favored by the gods of health, and secretly watched over by wise river spirits. He recites a spell just to be safe, and you don't protest. Placebo effect or not, you're not taking any chances. By the time he's done chanting, you feel better. Is it the willow, the prayer, the fact that you've been sitting by the river for 20 minutes and no one's asked you for a favor? Honestly, who cares? Willow bark becomes your secret weapon. Whenever the pounding starts, be it from children, festivals, or the eternal argument about which bread is best, you know where to go. No side effects except with chips in your mouth. No snake oil sales pitch. Just the quiet comfort of a tree that's been helping headaches long before the world had a word for them. And as you stroll home, headache fading, you realize sometimes the simplest medicine is the best medicine, even if it means you'll forever associate willows with relief and the faint taste of bark stuck between your teeth. If ancient Egypt had a mascot, it wouldn't be the Sphinx or a golden pharaoh. It would be honey. Seriously, forget about gold. Forget about papyrus. Honey is everywhere. It's in your kitchen, your medicine cabinet, your religious rituals, and occasionally places you wish it wouldn't be, such as your left sandal. If you wake up sticky, there's a 60% chance it's not from sweat or spilled beer. It's honey sneaking into your life like the world's sweetest stalker. You notice it first thing in the morning. Your breakfast bread is crusty and bland, but a smear of honey turns it into something you might even call enjoyable, at least by ancient Egyptian standards. You chase it with a sip of beer, because let's be honest, you're not a monster. And your day begins with a sugary kick that makes hauling water just a little less soul-crushing. But honey isn't just for eating. It's a medical marvel. The miracle cure all your neighbors can agree on, even if they can't agree on who left their donkey tied to your door again. Got a cut? Dab some honey on it. Sore throat? Swallow a spoonful. Insomnia, warm milk and honey, toothache, rash, cough, existential dread, you guessed it, honey. If you go to send the apothecary with any complaint, there's a good chance you'll leave smelling like a bakery. What makes honey so magical? For one, it doesn't spoil ever. Archaeologists have found jars of honey in ancient tombs that are still perfectly edible. Though, to be fair, no one is volunteering to be the first to taste test them. In a world without refrigerators, that's basically sorcery. Honey's natural antibacterial properties mean it keeps wounds clean and infections at bay. Something even the most skeptical scribe grudgingly admits after a successful recovery or two. Your grandmother swears by honey for everything. She slathers it on burns, mixes it with herbs for cough syrup, and when she's in a generous mood, drizzles a little on your sad, wilted vegetables. Some days you wonder if honey is just her answer for any problem. Grandmother, my arm is broken. Did you try honey? The roof is leaking. Honey and a prayer, dear. There's no problem too big, no situation too dire. You suspect she'd put honey on a broken heart if she thought it would help. Priests use honey in offerings to the gods, sweetening bread and cakes before placing them on altars. The bees themselves are considered little winged miracle workers, worthy of poems and occasional frantic running when a hive gets disturbed during a festival. Even in the afterlife, honey is prized. Tombs are packed with jars of the golden stuff. Because if there's one thing Egyptians agree on, it's that eternity should be sweet. There's a downside, of course. Honey is sticky. It gets everywhere. You lose count of how many tunics you've ruined with rogue honey drips. Your hands are constantly tacky, which is helpful for catching flies. Less helpful when shaking hands with a noble. Sometimes you find bees buzzing around your hair, drawn by the faint scent of honey you can never quite wash out. It's the price of sweetness, and you pay it every day. And let's not forget the bees, the true heroes of this story. Without them, ancient Egypt would be less sweet, less healthy, and possibly much grumpier. Beekeepers are minor celebrities, the only people who can confidently wear that many stings and still smile. You've even heard rumors of bee-related spells chanted to keep the hives thriving. If you ever meet someone who doesn't like honey, you immediately suspect them of being a foreign spy, or worse, someone who enjoys unsweetened pottage. So, as you lick honey from your fingers after breakfast, or slather it on your latest papyrus cut, remember you're participating in a tradition older than most temples, older than most of the gods, and definitely older than your neighbor's terrible singing. Honey is the golden thread running through Egyptian life. Sweet, sticky, and absolutely essential. Every culture has its magic plant, the one with more rumors than actual medical studies, the one that's equal parts cure, curse, and curiosity. In ancient Egypt, that plant is mundere. Even its name sounds mysterious, like something you'd whisper to a friend just before a thunderstorm. Mundere isn't just a root. It's a character in the village, a celebrity in the medicine cabinet, and a party trick in the making. You first hear about mundere from the village scribe who claims it can cure infertility, induce sleep, spark wild dreams, or at the very least make your cousin believe he's a falcon. You're skeptical. You've seen your cousin at parties, and he doesn't need much encouragement. But when the apothecary, Sinab, quietly pulls a strange knobby root from beneath his counter and waggles his eyebrows, your curiosity is officially piqued. Mundere doesn't look like much. Kind of like a misshapen parnip with a bad attitude. But everyone in Egypt agrees. It's powerful. The local priest insists it's sacred, a gift from Hathor, the goddess of love and fertility. The healer says it's an ancient remedy for pain, insomnia, and when mixed with beer, the courage to ask for a raise. You watch as Sinab grinds a sliver of mundere into a cup of wine, adds a splash of honey for bravery, and hands it over with a look that says, "Good luck." You sip cautiously. The taste is earthy, slightly bitter, but not unpleasant, somewhere between old carrot and hope. The effects, though, are something else. If blue lotus is a gentle nudge toward dreamland, mundere is a leapfrog jump straight into the arms of the unknown. The world gets softer around the edges. Your eyelids feel heavy and your thoughts start to wander. Suddenly, the local goose seems philosophical, and you're having deep conversations with your feet. For a brief moment, everything makes sense. Or maybe nothing does and you're okay with that. Mundere is the original multitasker. It's used as a sedative, a painkiller, a sleep aid. And according to that, one scroll cub keeps locked away, a way to spice up your romantic life. No one is sure how much is too much, which is why the apothecary handles it like it might explode. The line between pleasant dreams and 2 days in the goat shed wondering if you become a statue is thin, and everyone knows at least one story about someone who got a little too generous with their dosing. There are plenty of rituals around mundere. Priests wrap the root in linen, whispering spells to keep the bad spirits away. Healers claim the plant screams when pulled from the ground, a detail that's never been independently verified, possibly because anyone who hears it is too busy running away. Some say the mundere's powers are strongest during a full moon. Others argue it's all about how you harvest it, which if you ask cynically involves not getting caught by your neighbor's dog. But perhaps the real magic of mundere is its reputation. It's the plant everyone talks about, the one with a story for every occasion. Feeling sick? Try mundere. Can't sleep? Mundere tea. Nervous before your wedding night? Mundere and a little hope. Need a party trick? Just wave it around and watch half the village pretend they're suddenly very spiritual. Of course, skeptics remain. The village scribe mutters about herbal nonsense, and your practical aunt says the only thing Mundera cured in her youth was boredom. Still, you can't deny the plant's mystique or its ability to spark conversation long after the party ends. By the end of the night, you're left with a story, a slightly fuzzy memory, and a newfound respect for the world's most infamous route. Mundera, magic, medicine, and maybe just a really, really good excuse to believe in a little wonder. Let's be honest, sometimes the most healing thing in ancient Egypt isn't a potion, a root, or a pus. Sometimes it's a good old-fashioned sniff. That's right. In a land of pharaohs and sun gods, incense isn't just for making your home smell better than your neighbor's goat stable. It's medicine. It's ritual. It's how you clean the air, the soul, and hopefully the last trace of fish stew from your living room. You wake up congested. Maybe it's the sand. Maybe it's the papyrus dust. Maybe it's the suspiciously enthusiastic neighbor who insists on burning dried onions every time he gets a cold. Whatever the reason, your head feels like it's stuffed with linen. You could chew some willow bark. You could ask Synop for syrup. Or you could do what your grandmother always does. Light the incense and hope the problem floats away. The incense tray is a household staple sitting on the corner of your shelf next to the lucky scarab and the emergency bread. It's filled with precious resins, frankincense, myrrh, kefi, and occasionally something labeled mystery blend in your grandmother's handwriting. You grab a chunk of frankincense, drop it on the hot coals, and wait. The room fills with a soft white smoke that curls around you like an old friend and smells just expensive enough to make you forget your feet are still in last year's sandals. But incense in Egypt isn't just about the nose. It's serious business. Doctors prescribe it for headaches, congestion, and on truly desperate days, as a remedy for unclean air, a diagnosis that conveniently covers everything from the neighbor's cooking to a family member's digestive misfortune. The local priest is an incense enthusiast, waving a burner at every ceremony, funeral, and family dispute, convinced that a little smoke can put any trouble to rest. The science, at least as far as the Egyptians are concerned, is solid. Frankincense is believed to purify the air, chase away bad spirits, and soothe inflamed sinuses. Myrrh is for wounds, for prayers, and for anyone trying to get through the annual tax audit without crying. Kefi, a blend of resins, honey, wine, and raisins, is a cure for insomnia and an excuse to have dessert for dinner. Sometimes incense is burned just for the sound. The gentle hiss and pop of resin on coal is the ancient equivalent of a white noise machine. You sit by the smoke, breathing in and out, feeling the pressure in your head start to ease. Your grandmother sits beside you humming a tune that's older than the pyramids. She insists that bad spirits hate the smell of a moirar, and that if you want truly clean air, you should walk in circles 3 times and curse quietly under your breath. You give it a try, and while you're not convinced the spirits are gone, you do feel a little less like your head is stuffed with reeds. Of course, not all incense is created equal. The fancy stuff is for festivals, temple rituals, and when you're feeling generous, an apology to your spouse for tracking mud across the floor. Everyday incense is whatever the apothecary has left over. Sometimes aromatic, sometimes questionable, always smoky. Still, there's something soothing about watching the smoke curl through the sunlight, carrying your worries up and out the tiny window. Doctors, priests, and mothers all agree. If you can't cure it, at least you can make it smell better. Incense is the great equalizer. Everyone has their favorite. Everyone has an opinion, and no one remembers the last time they cleaned a burner. As the incense burns low and your headache fades, you realize maybe it's not about the smoke, the resin, or even the medicine. Maybe it's about the ritual, the pores, the breath, the comfort of a familiar scent in a familiar room. In ancient Egypt, that's health in its purest, smokiest form. Some people keep their medical records in a folder under the bed. In ancient Egypt, you keep yours rolled up, tied with twine, and possibly blessed by 3 different priests for good luck. Enter the world of the medical papyrus, the original prescription pad, the ancient answer to WebMD, and let's be honest, a document that's at least as confusing as your insurance plan. It starts when you're feeling under the weather. Maybe it's a headache or the mysterious cough that's making its way around the neighborhood. You visit Sinab, who, after asking far too many questions about your sleep habits and personal relationships, reaches for a prized possession. A faded ink-stained scroll covered in hieroglyphs, so tiny you'd need falcon eyes to read them. He unrolls it with the same care most people reserve for newborns and spicy gossip. This, he declares, is the Iber's papyrus, a medical text old when the pyramids were young. Sinab claims it's got a cure for everything. Bad back. There's a recipe for that. Toothache, at least 3 options, and one involves mashed onions and short prayer to the moon. Love problems? Well, the papyrus is nothing if not ambitious. The papyrus isn't just for show. Egyptian doctors and healers use it as both textbook and troubleshooting manual. The recipes are part science, part magic, and part let's see if you survive this. Some are straightforward. Mix willow bark and honey for fever. Others are less so. Grind lizard tails with date wine and apply to the affected area, but only on Tuesdays. You learn quickly that reading the papyrus is an art, not a science, and that sometimes the cure is just wait until your next birthday. It's not all guesswork. Some remedies in these ancient scrolls genuinely work. Honey for wounds, willow for pain, pomegranate for stomach troubles. The Egyptians, for all their gods and amulets, were keen observers. If something cured a farmer's rash or got the priest through another long festival, it earned a spot in the scroll. The medical papyri are a collective diary of centuries of experiments, desperate improvisation, and the kind of optimism only people living with daily crocodile threats could muster. But then there are the cautionary tales. Flip a few lines down, and you'll find remedies that read suspiciously like pranks or low-level dares. Recipes call for crocodile-dung pick uses, mashed mouse paste, or for truly stubborn headaches. Recite this incantation while balancing on your left foot and holding an onion. Modern science calls these placebo. Egyptians call them worth a shot. And of course, there are warnings. The papyrus is full of notes like, do not attempt on infants, not for use in hot weather. And the classic, if swelling continues, consult a higher authority. Sometimes that authority is the chief priest. Sometimes it's your mother-in-law. Either way, if a cure doesn't work, there's always another recipe, or at least a really good story to explain the rash. Not everyone trusts the papyrus. The village scribe thinks half the scroll is made up. The baker swears his bread tastes better than any remedy for stomach pain. But when you're desperate, you'll try anything, even if it means reciting a hymn to a frog while eating boiled herbs that look suspiciously like weeds from the riverbank. So you thank Sinab, tuck your tiny prescription and a reassuring spell into your tunic, and head home. You may not understand every symbol, but you know this. The papyrus is the community's safety net, the collective wisdom of generations, and the closest thing you have to a guarantee that tomorrow will be a little less mysterious. And as you crawl into bed, clutching your medicine and your hopes, you wonder, centuries from now, will anyone look at our remedies and laugh? For now, you're grateful to have a papyrus and a healer with a steady hand. Hair loss. It's the great equalizer affecting scribes, bakers, and pyramid architects alike. Ancient Egypt may have been the land of living gods, but even gods apparently have to worry about receding hairlines. If you thought modern infomercials were desperate, wait until you see what the Egyptians cooked up, because in this world, a shiny scalp is not just a personal crisis. It's a full-blown medical event, and everyone's got an opinion. You notice it one morning. You run your hand through your hair and discover your palm looks more like a broom than a beauty tool. Panic. You're only 28, and yet the back of your head is giving off pharaoh and retirement vibes. Word gets around fast thanks to your neighbor who apparently moonlights as a gossip columnist. By the end of the day, the whole street is recommending their own cure, and your grandmother is already mixing something questionable in the kitchen. Sinab the apothecary is delighted. Hair loss, you say? He shuffles over to his favorite shelf, a shrine to desperation and false hope. He starts with the classics. Try this oil made from the fat of a hippo, the marrow of a cat, and a sprig of fresh lettuce. Rub it in before sunrise, and don't forget to pray to Hathor for luck. The mixture is greenish, faintly rancid, and leaves you smelling like a salad that's been left out at a banquet. If you're lucky, someone suggests resin, melted, cooled, and mixed with honey. It's painted onto your scalp in thick stripes, supposedly to seal in the essence of youth. If nothing else, it guarantees you'll attract every bee within a 10 miles radius. For stubborn cases, there's the burnt porcupine hair method. The priest listens carefully, nods gravely, and consults a papyrus covered in symbols. He recites a spell, sometimes softly, sometimes at full volume, depending on how stubborn your symptoms are. There's clapping, waving, sometimes even hopping in a circle. Rituals refined over generations, passed down from priest to apprentice, and now performed just for you. Occasionally, he writes a spell on a scrap of linen and ties it to your wrist or tucks it under your pillow for protection. You're not sure if it helps, but it does give you something to show your neighbors. The real secret of these rituals isn't the spell, but the belief. The whole community trusts the priests. If they say you're getting better, you believe it. And often you actually do feel better. Maybe it's the placebo effect. Maybe it's relief at finally being the center of attention for once. Maybe it's the comfort of ritual in a world where so little makes sense. Either way, your cough seems less annoying and your dreams are just a little less crowded tonight. Of course, the priests have remedies for every ailment. Insomnia. There's a spell for that. Recited at dusk with a small offering of bread and a yawn for good measure. Trouble with digestion? Chant while rubbing your stomach in a clockwise motion. Then avoid talking to anyone named Kiri until sunrise. Even heartbreak is covered. Write your beloved's name in the sand and let the Nile carry it away. If nothing else, you'll get to enjoy a quiet moment by the river. Skeptics exist naturally. The village scribe calls it therapeutic theater, and Sinab the apothecary claims he once cured a rash by waving a chicken feather and telling his patient to think happy thoughts. But for most people, the priestly placebo is enough. It's a cure you can believe in, and sometimes it's all you need. There are limits, of course. Rituals won't reattach a finger loss to pyramid construction or stop the neighbors from gossiping about your strange dreams. But they do provide hope, a powerful thing in a world where most problems can't be solved by logic, but only by community, faith, and a little bit of performance art. As you leave the temple, linen amulet on your wrist, you feel lighter. The ache is fading. Or maybe you're just comforted by the thought that in Egypt you never suffer alone. Here the power of ritual is as real as any herb, any honey, any spell. And sometimes belief is the best medicine of all. Family planning. In ancient Egypt, it's not just a private matter. It's a group project, an engineering challenge, and, on bad days, an exercise in optimism. Modern birth control comes in discreet packaging with pages of fine print in Egypt. It comes with instructions like insert what exactly, and are you sure that's safe? Welcome to the world of ancient contraceptives where the ingredients are bold, the recipes are legendary, and the user reviews are complicated. Let's start with the most infamous crocodile-dung. Yes, you heard that right. Somewhere long before the pyramids, a very brave or very desperate Egyptian looked at a basking crocodile and thought, "This will solve my problems." The recipe is simple. Gather fresh dung. The fresher the better, apparently. Dry it and shape it into a small plug. The dung is then carefully inserted as a pessary. ideally before romance has a chance to blossom into something less manageable. The science dubious at best. The logic also questionable. Some scholars think it was the dung's texture, thick, sticky, and probably a very convincing mood killer that created a physical barrier. Others argue it was a potent form of ancient deterrent, as in if this is what you have to do for birth control, you might just decide abstinence is easier. Either way, it's a bold approach to contraception and probably the reason ancient Egyptian couples kept so many incense burners handy. But the Egyptians weren't content with just crocodile dung. They loved to innovate. Enter acacia gum, a more elegant option by ancient standards. The sap of the acacia tree, mixed with honey and ground dates, was fashioned into a paste and inserted much like the dung method. Unlike its swampy competitor, acacia had actual antimicrobial properties and contained compounds that could theoretically reduce the chance of conception. It's not exactly a 21st century pharmaceutical, but if you had to choose between honeyed acacia and last week's Nile side offering, you'd pick the tree every time. And there are more options still. Herbal pessaries made from sour milk, natron, that catch all miracle mineral, and even lint, because apparently anything absorbent was fair game. Spells, too, were part of the routine. The priestess or wise woman might inscribe a formula on a papyrus, fold it tightly, and have you wear it as a charm for extra protection. If nothing else, it gave you something to focus on during awkward conversations. Let's not pretend these methods were always effective. Even in the medical papyri, you find a hint of skepticism. Repeat as necessary and may require additional prayers. Birth rates were high. Families were large, and children were considered both a blessing and a necessary workforce for hauling water and avoiding chores. But still, the Egyptians tried. They weren't passive observers of fate. They experimented, shared tips, and swapped ingredients at the market with the same enthusiasm modern parents use when swapping sleep training hacks. Of course, not everyone was a fan. The local scribe found the entire enterprise suspicious, especially after an ill-timed encounter with a discarded crocodile plug on his morning walk. The temple priests alternated between blessing and cursing new recipes, depending on the political climate, and whose turn it was to clean the apothecary storeroom. Even your apothecary would shrug and offer a discreet packet of acacia with a wink, adding, "At least you won't attract flies. So you try, you hope. You light another stick of incense for good luck." And you remember that in ancient Egypt, even family planning is an adventure. Maybe the methods are wild. Maybe the odds are long. But at least you have options. A sense of humor, and if all else fails, a recipe you can pass down to your grandchildren with a warning label. And when in doubt, you keep a little extra acacia on hand just in case. Tooth pain, the universal human experience that bridges cultures, centuries, and socioeconomic status. Ancient Egypt is no exception. In a land where the diet consists mostly of bread that could double as construction material and dates that stick to your teeth like ancient glue, toothaches are as common as sand in your shoes. You, unfortunately, are suffering through one right now. It starts as a dull throb. Maybe it's from last night's late snack, a slab of unleavened bread dipped in honey, and by accident, a few stray pebbles. Maybe it's because you've been chewing on willow twigs, hoping for relief. Collect the spines, burn them to ash, and sprinkle liberally over the affected area. You'll look like you've lost a bet, but hope springs eternal. Priests have their own strategy, spells, and amulets. They recite hymns, tie charms to your hair, and instruct you to sleep with a clay statue of Bez, the dwarf god of luck, and apparently follicle recovery by your bedside. The gods favor the patient, you're told, as you count the days and hairs lost. But if none of these home remedies work, there's always the ancient Egyptian secret weapon, the wig. Wigs are everywhere. Nobles wear them, priests wear them, even the kids in the next village play dress up with leftover braids. There are wigs for every occasion. Black for mourning, braided for parties, fancy for festivals, and understated for days when you're just trying to avoid sunburn and the shame of your gleaming pate. The wig makers are artists, part tailor, part therapist. You step into their workshop and are measured, fitted, and gently reassured that nobody will ever know. For some, wigs are a status symbol. The fancier the better. For others, they're camouflage. And for a select few, they're an excuse to reinvent themselves entirely. Maybe today you're a high priest. Tomorrow you're a festival queen. All thanks to a clever arrangement of palm fibers, sheep's wool, and a dash of confidence. Of course, they're the bald proud. Some Egyptians embrace the shine. After all, priests and certain officials actually shave their heads for religious reasons, cleanliness, ritual purity, and if you're honest, probably just to save on all that lettuce oil. In fact, a smooth scalp is a sign of discipline and holiness. Still, most of the population can't shake the dream of thick flowing hair, especially when the sun is high and the fashion stakes are even higher. So you slather on the oil, try the spells, consider the burnt porcupine treatment, and when all else fails, reach for the finest wig your onions can buy. You might not conquer boldness, but you'll survive it with style, a sense of humor, and at least 3 new remedies to recommend at your next beer breakfast. In ancient Egypt, hope is always just 1 jar of hippo fat away. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the weather is hot, the sand is endless, and everything that isn't nailed down either bites, stings, or swarms. Alongside the majestic Nile, you live in a land of tombs, temples, and, unfortunately, an astonishing number of venomous creatures. If you haven't met a snake yet, don't worry. One will find you, and when it does, you'll need more than quick reflexes. You'll need the full power of ancient Egyptian medicine, and ideally a good pair of sandals. Let's say you're minding your own business, hauling water at dawn, when you feel a sharp pinch on your ankle. You look down. It's either a snake, slippery, beautiful, and now deeply offended, or a scorpion, the local champion of how to ruin your day in 2 seconds or less. You do what anyone would. Panic quietly, then sprint to Sinab the apothecary, clutching your foot and praying the thing wasn't sacred. Sineb sees you coming and doesn't even flinch. Snake bites and scorpion stings are just another part of the daily grind, like sunburn, sand in your bread, or existential dread. Show me the wound, he says, squinting over his jars. He's got a shelf devoted to anti-venom, but you'd better hope you can sit still long enough to hear about it. The first remedy is time-honored. Spit on it, slap a wet cloth over the bite, and start chanting. Sometimes the cure is more about convincing the venom to get bored and leave. But the real magic is in the apothecary's arsenal. Sinab produces a pus of herbs, onions, frankincense, honey, and a mysterious powder that might be powdered lizard tail. For the swelling, he says, dabbing the wound. You're not sure if it works, but you're relieved to have something other than the local priest's suggestion, which is mostly repent and drink water. If you're lucky, Sinab has a more specialized cure. Ancient Egyptian anti-venoms are impressive. Concoctions made from roots, herbs, and sometimes even tiny bits of the snake itself, ground up and mixed with wine or beer. The logic is both daring and slightly deranged. Fight poison with poison. You eye the potion wearily. It smells like a barn after rain, but your foot is swelling and you're running out of options. For those who believe in the spiritual angle, there's always the priest. The temple is full of rituals for bites and stings. They write spells on scraps of papyrus, tie them to your wrist, and recite prayers to Circe, the scorpion goddess, an all-purpose venom bouncer. Some spells are oddly specific, like chant 3 times while facing north and waving a dried fig leaf. Others involve burning incense or drawing protective circles around the wound. Placebo maybe, but sometimes belief works better than any pus. There's no shortage of advice from the neighbors either. Some insist you rub mud on the bite. Others say to suck out the venom and spit in the Nile. Bad news for the fish. Your grandmother recommends garlic and onions for everything, including spiritual fortitude and social distancing. You try them all because when it comes to snake bites, no idea is too ridiculous. Of course, not everyone survives unscathed. Sometimes the venom wins, and you spend a few days feverish, hallucinating, and swearing off riverside walks forever. But sometimes, against all odds, you recover thanks to a combination of Sineb's ingenuity, the god's mercy, and enough onions to make you a walking repellent for all living things. In ancient Egypt, survival isn't just about strength or speed. It's about having the right remedies, the right prayers, and a hearty sense of humor. Whether you end up with a story, a scar, or both, you've earned your stripes as a survivor in the land of snakes, scorpions, and cures that make you appreciate shoes just a little bit more. If you thought medicine in ancient Egypt was all herbs and honey, think again. Sometimes the most powerful cure in the land isn't found in a jar, but in a whisper, a chant, and a heavy dose of communal optimism. Welcome to the world of priestly placios, where ritual trumps reason, and the only thing stronger than the medicine is the belief that it'll work. It starts with a complaint, a pain in your side, a persistent cough, a feeling that you've been cursed by the gods of mild inconvenience. Maybe your knee aches, or your dreams have been a little too crowded lately. The neighbor's advice didn't work. Sineb's latest pace just made you sticky, so you shuffle to the temple, hoping the priest will have something stronger, or at least weirder. The temple is a cool sanctuary from the hot sun, full of incense, quiet chanting, and that distinct aura of people who know secrets but will never share them. You wait your turn, try not to sneeze as the incense smoke curls around your face. Finally, a priest greets you with the solemnity of someone preparing to read your fate. He asks questions. When did the pain start? What have you eaten? Have you offended any relatives recently? You answer honestly, though you're not sure what your cousin's wedding has to do with your sore throat. Either way, by midday, you're wincing every time you try to smile, laugh, or eat anything harder than a boiled onion. You shuffle to Sineb, the Ville's apothecary dentist hybrid, whose qualifications are mostly willingness to poke at mouths and access to a terrifying array of pointy implements. His shop smells like honey, onions, and the faint terror of 1,000 previous patients. You describe your symptoms: throbbing, aching, occasional howling of the moon. Sam nods wisely. He's seen it all before. The first treatment is always simple. Honey, Egypt's favorite remedy, is dabbed straight onto the aching tooth. Honey soothes, disinfects, and distracts you with sweetness. If you're lucky, the pain yes. If not, Sam moves on to phase 2. A pus made of cumin, incense, and inexplicably ground mouse bones. You're not convinced, but at this point, you'd let a camel chew your food for you if it promised relief. Toothaches are so rampant that Egyptian medical papyri devote entire sections to them. There are spells, of course, because what's pain without a little spiritual drama? Priests will inscribe prayers onto amulets, which you're instructed to wear around your neck until the pain subsides, or until you forget which god you're supposed to thank. Sometimes the priest simply smacks a crocodile tooth against your forehead, mutters a few incantations, and assures you that healing is inevitable. For the more courageous, there's dental intervention. Ancient Egyptians were pioneers in dental care, at least by ancient standards. Archaeologists have found skulls with evidence of early dental fillings, little plugs of resin, malachite, or linen stuffed into the hollowed-out tooth. The process is not gentle. Sam's cousin, who moonlights as a barber, is called in for his steady hand and total lack of empathy. There's no anesthesia unless you count gripping the chair and biting on a papyrus scroll. The filling is pressed into the cavity, possibly accompanied by a prayer, a scream, and the offer of small beer to help you recover. Don't expect whitening treatments or floss. The best you can hope for is a vaguely clean mouth, and the knowledge that statistically you'll outlive your teeth. The average Egyptian smile is a patchwork of chipped enamel, missing murs, and optimistic gaps. Even the pharaohs, with their treasure chests of remedies, aren't immune. Archaeologists have found evidence of royal abscesses and dental disasters worthy of their own horror stories. What about prevention? There's always chewing sticks, rinses of natron, which taste like defeat, and endless advice from relatives. Avoid hard bread. Don't gnaw on palm fibers. Say your prayers. And maybe, just maybe, try a little less honey. Good luck convincing anyone of that. And yet, despite the pain, the rituals, and the occasional mouse bone you endure, maybe the filling holds. Maybe the amulet works. Or maybe you just get used to the pain. Another reminder that in ancient Egypt, survival is a team effort between hope, superstition, and whatever you can stick in a tooth. So, you walk home, jaw aching, but spirit mostly intact, dreaming of a future where the worst dental drama is running out of toothpaste. For now, you'll settle for honey, prayers, and the satisfaction of being part of the world's first dental experiment. It's morning in ancient Egypt, and you're standing in front of a polished copper mirror, squinting at your reflection in the gentle Nile sunlight. Your eyes are puffy, your skin is a little sandy, and your hair, well, we covered the state of that in segment 13. But never fear, here, looking good and staying healthy are part of the same tradition. And it all starts with a ritual as old as the pyramids. Applying makeup that's as medicinal as it is glamorous. You reach for the coal pot, a squat little jar filled with black chalky powder made from crushed galena, a lead-based mineral. Yes, lead. You tap a wooden applicator into the powder and draw a bold line around your eyes, flicking the ends upward with a practiced hand. Instantly, you look more mysterious, more elegant, and more like someone who just might know the secret to eternal life. Cleopatra didn't invent this look. She was just continuing a tradition thousands of years old. But Egyptian eyeliner isn't just for dramatic effect or for impressing the crocodile gods. It's actual medicine. At least that's what the priests and healers say. The coal keeps the harsh desert sun from blinding you, deflects sand, and allegedly repels evil spirits and jealous neighbors. Some scrolls claim it prevents eye infections. Modern scientists think they might be onto something. Galena does have mild antibacterial properties, though mild is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And coal isn't just for women. Men wear it, priests wear it, even toddlers get a little dash before festivals. In Egypt, everyone is a trendsetter, and the only rule is applied generously. The result? A society where smoky eyes are not a runway fad, but a communal defense mechanism against glare, bugs, and supernatural troublemakers. Cosmetics are everywhere. Your skin gets scrubbed with a mixture of natron, Egypt's answer to soap, milk, and honey, leaving you both exfoliated and slightly delicious. Red ochre brightens your cheeks and lips. Scented oils, myrrh, frankincense, and lotus are massaged into your skin until you gleam in the sun and smell like you've just robbed the god's personal spa. There are even recipes for anti-wrinkle salves. Mix frankincense, crushed beans, and a dab of sour milk. Then hope for the best. But back to the eyes. You finish your kohl application and move on to green malachite powder for the lower lids. It's the perfect pop of color for anyone looking to stand out at the temple or scare off the evil eye. You blink experimentally. No sign of conjunctivitis yet, just a sense of satisfaction and a sudden urge to recite poetry. The beauty routines are more than vanity, they're armor. The Nile sunlight is harsh, the winds are drying, and the flies, well. The flies would have their own reality show if given the chance. Makeup is your shield. Without it, you're vulnerable to illness, gossip, and the endless parade of relatives with opinions about your pores. Healers and priests support the regimen. They prescribe makeup as often as medicine. Here, Apply this for swelling or rub this ointment before a big negotiation. There are scrolls of advice for every skin concern. Freckles, rashes, aging, or general dullness. Most cures involve some combination of fat, oil, minerals, and hope. The more superstitious among you whisper that the color and pattern of your eyeliner can predict your luck, your health, and how many frogs you'll find in your water jug. Today, skeptics exist as always. The local scribe claims it's all fashion. The old man next door says he never wore coal and never got sick. But then again, he also claims to have invented bread. So you step outside, face painted and confidence high. In ancient Egypt, you're not just wearing makeup, you're wearing medicine, protection, and a history written in bold black lines. And if anyone questions your eyeliner, just squint dramatically and say it's for your health. Who's going to argue with tradition? It starts with a chill that won't go away. Even under the relentless Egyptian Sunday, your skin prickles, your teeth chatter. The next minute, you're sweating buckets as if R.A. himself is holding a magnifying glass over your bed. Congratulations, you got a fever. And in ancient Egypt, that means it's time to call in every remedy, ritual, and relative who thinks they know best. Step 1. Accept that your fate is now in the hands of the community. News of your fever travels fast. By the time you finish your first fit of shivering, your neighbor is at the door with unsolicited advice and a bag of onions. Sinab the apothecary appears soon after, armed with a basket of jars and the resigned look of a man who's seen too many cases of it's just a little Nile flu. The medical approach is straightforward if optimistic. Sinab checks your pulse, your tongue, and asks how many frogs you've seen in your dreams. Apparently this matters. He starts with a classic cooling pick uses. Linen cloth soaked in cold Nile water mixed with crushed mint leaves are gently placed on your forehead, chest, and if you're unlucky, your armpits. It's soothing, refreshing, and only slightly humiliating when your grandmother walks in and starts critiquing Sinab's technique. Pusses aren't the only option. The Egyptians love their drinks. And for fever, nothing beats a dose of date wine. Sweet, mildly alcoholic, and strong enough to distract you from your misery. Date wine is both medicine and reward for surviving another day. Sin pours a cup, mumbles a blessing to Seek, goddess of healing, and instructs you to drink slowly. It won't cure the fever, he warns, but you'll care less about it. A second cup, and you might even forget who you are. Priests get involved, too. Armed with incense burners and scrolls of spells, they wave frankincense through the sick room, chanting prayers that promise to drive out the heat demon and cool the blood. If you're lucky, the smoke helps your headache. If not, at least the place smells better. You end up with a new amulet tied around your wrist and instructions to sleep facing north and avoid cheese for 3 days because naturally fever demons hate both. Home remedies multiply as your fever lingers. Friends show up with cold compresses, cucumber slices, or bowls of chilled pomegranate juice. Your aunt insists on rubbing your feet with goose fat just in case. Someone offers a tea made from hibiscus and wild herbs that tastes suspiciously like disappointment. The general rule, if it's cold and vaguely edible, slap it on, drink it, or both. There's a social side to sickness, too. The moment you're feverish, your house becomes a gathering spot for worried relatives, chatty neighbors, and at least one person who just wants to critique your bed linens. Everyone tells fever stories. The time the baker nearly melted, or the festival dancer who sweated out her own weight and still performed a flawless lotus pose. They laugh, they reminisce, and for a while you forget just how miserable you feel. Of course, some fevers are more stubborn. The priests whisper about bad air and angry spirits. If you're really unlucky, someone suggests leeches, at which point you suddenly feel much better and insist on returning to work. Eventually, though, the fever breaks. Maybe it was the date wine. Maybe it was the pus. Maybe it was the communal power of a dozen worried Egyptians crowding your bed and debating the best prayer for coolness. Whatever the reason, you wake up one morning drenched in sweat, exhausted, but miraculously hungry. As you sip a victory cup of leftover date wine, you realize that in ancient Egypt, no one suffers alone. Here, every fever is a group project. Every cure, a mixture of kindness, creativity, and hope. And if nothing else, you've discovered the secret to healing. Never underestimate the power of a cold puss and a well-timed glass of wine. It's a truth universally acknowledged in ancient Egypt that sooner or later your stomach will betray you. Maybe it's the pottage that's been simmering for a suspiciously long time. Maybe it's last night's undercooked duck. Or maybe it's simply a cosmic prank. Either way, you're clutching your midsection, praying to that for mercy, and regretting every questionable food choice you've ever made. When gut trouble strikes, the whole village gets involved. Your neighbor suggests walking it off, which is both unhelpful and optimistic. Your grandmother, the family's undisputed digestive expert, swears by a handful of dried figs and a lecture about chewing properly. But you need something stronger, something that will put an end to your misery, or at least move it along quickly. Enter Samb, Egypt's master of questionable medicine. You limp into his shop, clutching your belly and looking for a miracle. Sam takes one look at your greenish paler and immediately reaches for his two favorite words, laxative and emetic. Let's clear things out, he says, which is either comforting or alarming depending on how much time you have before your next appointment. The remedies are legendary. For constipation, Sam prescribes castor oil, thick, bitter, and legendary for its ability to send even the most stubborn gut packing. Just a spoonful, he says, handing it over with a knowing look. You brace yourself, swallow, and within the hour, you're experiencing a personal exodus. Castor oil may be natural, but in ancient Egypt, it's considered a force of nature. But let's say your issue isn't moving things along, but rather getting rid of something you've already eaten. A truly questionable pomegranate perhaps, or a mystery stew from a neighbor who tries new recipes. This calls for anik. The ancient recipe, a mixture of warm water, natron, and a few ground herbs that taste like regret and work like a charm. Within minutes, you're purging more than just your last meal. You might even get a congratulatory pat on the back from Samb for a successful expulsion. For less dramatic cases, there's a gentler approach. Prunes, figs, and dates are favorites for coaxing the bowels into action. Honey mixed with warm beer is another classic, as is a porridge made from barley and soothing herbs. Eat this, SB says, sliding a bowl across the table. If it doesn't fix you, at least you'll be too busy chewing to complain. There's also the detox school of thought. Some healers swear by regular purges just in case. The logic goes like this. If the Nile floods every year to clean the land, why shouldn't you? This leads to annual cleansing festivals where everyone lines up for a dose of something unpronounceable and spends the rest of the day very close to the riverbank. Of course, not all remedies are scientific. The village priest has his own answer for gut trouble. Write your symptoms on a scrap of papyrus, burn it, and scatter the ashes on the wind. If the pain lingers, recite a spell about banishing the worms, and wear an amulet shaped like a tiny, embarrassed duck. You try it all because at this point, dignity is less important than relief. Every Egyptian household has stories about famous purges. There's the time your uncle tried a double dose of castor oil and missed an entire week of work. Or the neighbor who ate raw leeks, then spent 3 days convinced he could talk to cats. Trust me, bro, is as much a medical credential as any papyrus scroll. Eventually, mercifully, the crisis passes. Your gut settles. You emerge from the ordeal a little lighter, a little wiser, and with a newfound respect for dried figs. In ancient Egypt, digestive disasters are a rite of passage and a reminder that sometimes the best medicine is whatever gets you back on your feet, with only your pride a little worse for wear. Night falls in ancient Egypt like a velvet curtain, drawn tight across the desert sky. The heat finally gives way to cool breezes. The Nile laps softly at the banks, and the world is briefly peaceful. Unless you're one of the millions of ancient insomniacs desperately wishing the local frogs would hold their nightly orchestra somewhere else. In this world, sleep is precious. Dreams are serious business. And bedtime comes with a ritual as rich as a pharaoh's banquet. You begin the evening routine with the basics. A quick splash of Nile water, hoping it's not too upstream from the livestock. A change into your finest, least scratchy linen, and a prayer to Bez, the squat, cheerful household god of music, sleep, and keeping away nighttime pests, both real and supernatural. Then comes the sleep potion, because no one in ancient Egypt expects to get through the night with just positive thinking and a pile of reeds. Senb, your apothecary, has a remedy for every sleeper. Trouble nodding off? He prescribes a cup of warm milk blended with honey, a few drops of blue lotus extract, and sometimes a pinch of poppy for the nights when even the priest can't silence the neighbors. The brew is comforting, sweet, and just a little bit suspicious. Sip slowly, he advises, and try not to think about the goat. For children, he swaps in a calming tea made from chamomile and mint, promising gentle dreams and slightly less snoring. Sleep in ancient Egypt is a portal, not just a pause. The people believe your soul leave your body at night to walk among the gods, collect wisdom, and maybe spy on the neighbors. This makes dreams important, sometimes terrifyingly so. Every morning, the marketplace buzzes with gossip about who dreamed what. Did you see a snake, a boat, a feast of onions? The local dream interpreter, a professional with more job security than a pyramid architect, is in high demand. He listens solemnly as villagers recount their nighttime adventures, nodding wisely and occasionally inventing new interpretations on the spot. Some dreams are clear omens. Snakes mean trouble. Fish mean good luck. And crocodiles, well, if you're dreaming of crocodiles, it's probably time to reevaluate your life choices. If you see yourself flying, it could mean a change is coming or that you've eaten too many poppy cakes before bed. The dream interpreter keeps a giant book of meanings, but you suspect he makes it up half the time just to keep things interesting. Not all nighttime rituals are spiritual. Some are purely practical. You tie an amulet around your neck to ward off nightmares, or tuck a tiny figure of bears under your pillow for extra protection. If you're especially anxious, the priest will scribble a spell onto a scrap of linen and knot it to your bed frame. There are even instructions in the medical papyrus for the perfect sleeping position. Head facing north, knees slightly bent, mouth closed to keep out flies and evil spirits. Insomnia, of course, is always lurking. On sleepless nights, you lie awake counting stars, mosquitoes, and regrets. You might sneak another cup of sleep potion or listen to your grandmother tell stories about the days when people could sleep through anything, even a sandstorm or your uncle snoring. Eventually, you drift off, comforted by the chorus of frogs and the knowledge that everyone, even the pharaoh, is battling for a little rest. And in your dreams, anything is possible. You might dine with gods, run from talking cats, or discover a hidden room in the afterlife stocked with bottomless date wine. You wake up groggy, but a little wiser, ready to face another day, armed with omens, interpretations, and the faint aftertaste of blue lotus on your tongue. In ancient Egypt, sleep isn't just rest. It's an adventure. And if you ever wonder whether the rituals work, just remember, as long as you're still dreaming, they must be doing something right. Life as an ordinary Egyptian comes with its own wild pharmacy. Honey for wounds, blue lotus for parties, crocodile-dung for you remember. But what if you were a pharaoh? What if your medicine cabinet wasn't a battered reed basket, but an actual room attended by men with titles longer than the Nile? Welcome to the royal pharmacy, a world of luxury, exclusivity, and remedies so rare you might need a personal scribe just to keep track. Imagine waking up with a sore throat in the palace. You don't call for Sinub the apothecary, beloved as he is by the masses. No, the palace has its own chief physician, the keeper of the royal right arm, assisted by a dozen apprentices, 2 scribes, and a small army of servants. You ring a bell, or clap your hands, or summon someone with a decorative cat, and suddenly you're surrounded by the best that ancient medicine has to offer. The royal pharmacy is a treasure trove of imported wonders. There are jars of rare myrrh and frankincense brought by camel from distant Pont. There are opulent oils, cedarwood, cardamom, cinnamon stored in carved alabaster pots. Your remedies might arrive wrapped in imported linen, accompanied by a handwritten prayer from the high priest, and delivered with a bow. This isn't medicine. This is a wellness retreat with hieroglyphics. The pharaoh's medicines include exotic imports like Babylonian licorice root, Indian pepper, and lapis lazuli ground into mystical powders. There's mastic gum for bad breath because even the gods judge halitosis, date wine laced with precious resins for fevers, and lotus blossoms harvested from sacred temple ponds. Some prescriptions are as much about prestige as they are about health. If you're pharaoh, even your cough syrup is a flex. But it's not all luxury. Some royal cures are just as mysterious as those used by the common folk, just a bit more theatrical. Royal doctors still rely on honey, willow, and poppy, but with a dash of rare spice and a dramatic chant for good measure. Need a balm for your aching joints? Only the finest oils and the choicest beeswax will do. Massaged into royal muscles by a servant who probably has an official title like assistant to the junior ointment bearer. The royal pharmacy also stocks the latest in medical scrolls. The palace library is filled with papyri from generations of court physicians detailing treatments, warnings, and more than a few personal notes. Do not mix with beer. See last summer's disaster. The pharaoh's doctors are scholars and experimenters trusted to test and tweak ancient remedies on royal bodies. Because if anyone gets the cutting-edge stuff, it's the person in charge of the taxes. Of course, there are risks. Being the first to try a new imported remedy isn't always a perk. If a Babylonian powder makes you break out in blue spots, or if a rare spice cleanses your insides a bit too enthusiastically, well, that's a royal secret. And while the palace has the best resources, it also has the most pressure. If the pharaoh catches a cold, the court trembles. If the pharaoh sneezes, someone writes a poem about it. And let's not forget the royal superstitions. Even with the world's best medicine, the palace trusts in protective amulets, prayers, and rituals. The court magician works overtime to ward off evil spirits and jealous rivals. Every treatment comes with an extra layer of ceremony, because after all, a healthy pharaoh means a stable universe. You of course hear rumors of these luxuries while sipping your homebrew beer and chewing on willow twigs. It's tempting to be jealous, but remember, even the mightiest pharaoh can't escape the occasional bad stew or snake bite. The real difference, they just have better packaging and someone else to handle the paperwork. In the end, the royal pharmacy is proof that in Egypt, health is status, spectacle, and a little bit of magic. And for the rest of us, well, there's always honey. For every scroll packed with Egyptian cures, honey for wounds, blue lotus for dreams, poppy for that persistent urge to run from your responsibilities, there's a warning scribbled in the margins. Welcome to the less glamorous side of the ancient medical papyrus, where even the bravest healers occasionally admit, maybe don't try this at home. You discover this the hard way as you watch Sinub, the apothecary, frown over a crumbling scroll. He squints at a recipe, mutters something about risky business, and skips ahead to a section boldly titled Remedies Best Avoided Unless Desperate or Already Halfway to the Afterlife. Suddenly, that honey and crocodile-dung mixture doesn't sound so appetizing. Egyptian medicine is full of bold ideas, but it's not short on caution. Some remedies are followed by instructions like repeat as necessary, while others include more ominous advice. Do not administer to children, the elderly, or anyone you'd like to see again. You quickly realize that the world's first prescription pads also came with the world's first disclaimers. Call it ancient fine print. Some of these warnings are practical. Certain herbs, when ground up and mixed with wine, can be miraculous or disastrous depending on whether the wine is any good. May cause sweating, confusion, and spontaneous singing. The papyrus warns. And you remember last spring's festival when the neighbor's uncle took 2 doses and spent 3 days talking to imaginary cats. The side effects aren't just physical. Take the infamous blue lotus. Lovely in moderation, but the papyrus sternly notes, excessive use may result in lost sandals and confusion regarding household animals, or poppy juice, which can bring blessed relief, or a long nap that lasts well past your shift in the fields. Even humble willow bark comes with the advice. May cause mouth dryness and a tendency to lecture strangers about its benefits. Then there are the truly odd cases. The scrolls recount stories of failed experiments with lizard blood tonic or burnt mouse salve, followed by lines like effect and proven subject still itchy. There's a whole section on snake bite cures, many of which conclude, if swelling continues, consult the priest or your closest surviving relative. The message is clear. Sometimes all you can do is hope, and the warnings aren't just for the patients. Sinab grumbles about the dangers of handling certain resins. Some irritate the skin, others stain your tunic, and at least one is guaranteed to make your neighbor accuse you of witchcraft when making birth control pessaries out of acacia and honey. The papyrus helpfully reminds, store away from goats. A tip that probably comes from hard-won experience. The papyrus also documents remedies that have been crossed out completely. A big red mark appears over recipes involving spoiled fish brine or fermented frog paste with notes like, I tried. It didn't help. You imagine generations of healers experimenting bravely, then quietly warning everyone else not to make the same mistake. Sometimes the warnings are about more than the medicine. Do not attempt this remedy on festival days or after drinking date wine. Pray before, during, and after application. If you dream of baboons, discontinue immediately. Ancient Egyptians understood that half of medicine is luck. The other half is divine goodwill, and the rest is not letting your neighbor try things out on you first. By the time you've heard the full list of side effects, you're grateful for the warnings, if not exactly reassured. Medicine, after all, is as much about learning what not to do. You take your jar of honey, your willow bark, and your tiny scroll of don'ts, hoping for the best, and maybe a story to tell if things go wrong. And as you crawl into bed, you offer a little prayer of thanks for the healers who tried, failed, and wrote it all down. Because in ancient Egypt, survival is equal parts bravery, caution, and the wisdom to sometimes just say no. If there's one thing ancient Egyptians believed more fervently than in the healing power of honey or the stubbornness of the human stomach, it's that death is not the end. It's the start of the longest journey of all, one that requires a very specific packing list and, yes, a rather impressive medicine cabinet. Welcome to the world of afterlife pharmaceuticals, where your big sleep is anything but ordinary. From the moment you're born, preparations begin, not just for life's daily aches, but for the hereafter. It's never too early to start thinking about what you'll need when you're tumbling through the dua, that twisting netherworld where the heart is weighed. Crocodile gods lurk, and no one can remember where they left their sandals. The stakes, immortality, or at the very least avoiding any afterlife indigestion. As the end approaches, your family calls in the embalmer and priests who arrive with scrolls, amulets, and a shopping list of remedies that would make even Sinab jealous. You're washed, anointed, and wrapped in linen with the kind of loving care that says, just in case you wake up, we want you to smell great. But the most important part, besides the golden jewelry, naturally is the supply of medicinal drugs and potions stashed in your tomb. The ancient Egyptians are nothing if not thorough. They send you into the afterlife armed with jars of honey. Nature's all-purpose cure. Cakes made with blue lotus to keep your spirit mellow, and a generous stash of poppy resin, because even a dead soul might need a little help relaxing. There's willow bark for headaches, date wine for fevers, and every kind of ointment, salve, and pus the village could scrape together. The result, the world's first fully stocked eternal pharmacy. The logic is as brilliant as it is comforting. The afterlife, as described by priests and poets, is basically a continuation of earthly existence, just with more paperwork, more gods, and slightly fewer reliable maps. Why take chances? You might meet a snake or scorpion on the way. Better pack some anti-venom powder. You might need a snack. Throw in some figs and a little honey. If your heart gets heavy, a nice poppy infusion will ease the existential anxiety of Judgment Day. Not all these remedies are meant for you alone. Amulets, ointments, and sacred perfumes are included as bribes or offerings for the gatekeepers of the afterlife. You never know when Osiris, Anubis, or a bureaucratic ibis-headed god will need to be persuaded with a jar of high-quality frankincense or a cake flavored with acacia. A well-stocked drug stash isn't just for healing. It's for negotiating your way to eternal peace. And then there's the paperwork. Every jar, cake, and potion must be carefully labeled, preferably in cursive hieroglyphs, so you don't accidentally grab ointment for boils when you meant to use oil of immortality. The best tombs are organized, their shelves lined like a celestial spa. Proof that even in death, Egyptians refused to be caught unprepared. Of course, the modern visitor looks at these burial armistices with awe and maybe a little envy. Who wouldn't want to enter the afterlife with a medicine chest, a library of spells, and a lifetime supply of honey? Meanwhile, archaeologists are still unwrapping ancient bandages, occasionally finding medicinal cakes and vials that still smell faintly of MYR. The dead, it seems, are better stocked than most college students. So, as you drift to sleep tonight, take comfort in the Egyptian belief that the big sleep is not to be faced empty-handed. A little honey, a little poppy, a prayer, and maybe a carefully labeled ointment. These are the things that keep a soul comfortable on its journey. Because in Egypt, you never really say goodbye to your medicine cabinet. You just move it down the hall forever. Imagine this. You wake up groggy with a headache and a strange urge to check if your cat is still talking to you. You stumble into your bright modern bathroom. The shelves are lined with little plastic bottles, pill organizers, and a tube of something that promises to erase wrinkles in 2 weeks or your money back. But as you squint at the labels, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, melatonin, probiotics, you start to realize just how ordinary everything is. Where's the excitement? Where's the crocodile-dung? It's easy to take your local pharmacy for granted. Step through the sliding glass doors, and you're greeted by fluorescent lights and endless shelves of order and logic. Nothing is mysterious. Everything is FDA approved. There's not a single jar of blue lotus, not a whiff of frankincense, and the only poppy product is hidden behind the counter and available only with 3 forms of ID. Even the vitamins have numbers and serving sizes instead of hieroglyphics and a dash of hope. You might think this is progress, and in many ways it is. Modern medicine comes with instructions, safety caps, and side effect warnings longer than some ancient scrolls. You can buy a thermometer that beeps when it's done, a bandage that actually sticks, and a bottle of cough syrup that tastes vaguely of artificial cherries instead of regret and wild speculation. But for all its predictability, your pharmacy isn't nearly as much fun as ancient Egypt's. There's no thrill of wondering what's actually inside the mystery blend. No apothecary named Sin telling you. Just a spoonful and recite a hymn for luck. There's nobody offering to bless your ibuprofen or tie an amulet to your bottle of multivitamins, just in case the spirits are feeling fussy. Modern pharmacies don't sell optimism by the jar or throw in a love spell with your prescription. Think of what's missing. The apothecary shop, a delightful chaos of herbs, resins, animal bones, and a gossiping crowd. The local priest chanting over your pus. The certainty that whatever you're handed could be medicine, a party trick, or both. Where are the dried frogs? Where's the shelf labeled best not to ask? When was the last time a doctor handed you a prescription and then winked and said, "Don't take with goat cheese on a full moon"? Today's over-the-counter remedies come with guarantees, not gods. You can treat a headache without needing to grind willow bark or check the phase of the moon. If your stomach's upset, there's a gentle berry-flavored chewable, not a sharp warning about possible sudden hymn singing. Even so, modern medicine is not without its oddities. People still search for miracle cures, trust in the placebo effect, and occasionally try to fix everything with honey and a little prayer, just like your Egyptian ancestors. And let's be honest, trends come and go. Who's to say today's vitamin gummies and detox teas won't seem bizarre in 1,000 years? Maybe some future archaeologist will puzzle over your scented candles and wonder if pumpkin spice was a legendary healing ingredient. Maybe someone will find your herbal sleep spray and debate whether it was used for insomnia, love charms, or just to mask the sin of ancient laundry. The truth is, every age has its medicine, its rituals, and its little leaps of faith. The difference is that today, most of your remedies are predictable, regulated, and taste a lot less like donkey fat. But every so often, even now, you'll hear advice that sounds suspiciously familiar. Try a little honey for that cough, or drink some warm milk and sleep with your head to the north. Maybe we're not so far from ancient Egypt after all. So next time you pop a pill or rub on a cream, take a moment to appreciate the weird, winding journey that medicine has made from crocodile-dung to child-proof caps. Your pharmacy may be less exciting, but it's a lot cleaner. And for that, even Sinab would raise a cup of beer in your honor. Every so often, life in ancient Egypt gets just a little too much. The bread is heavy, the sun is relentless, and the parade of never-ending family obligations weighs on you like a block of limestone. So, what do you do when you feel spiritually and physically clogged? In Egypt, the answer is always the same. Time for a purge. Welcome to the ancient world of cleansing, where the local medical papyrus doesn't just suggest eating better or sleeping more. No, it offers a rigorous and slightly terrifying regimen designed to clear out not just your digestive system, but your worries, your regrets, and occasionally your faith in humanity. Purges are part medicine, part ritual, and all too real. Sim, the apothecary naturally, is the first to recommend a thorough cleanse. He greets you at a shop with a look that says, "I know exactly what you've been eating, and it's time to pay the price." The papyrus is ready, brimming with recipes and warnings. His favorite, a morning tonic made from castor oil, fig syrup, and a hint of natron, Egypt's favorite mineral cure-all. Drink quickly, he advises, and stay near a latrine. Today is not a day for long walks. You follow his instructions and brace for impact. The results are, in a word, immediate. The ancient Egyptian logic is simple. If it can leave your body, it should. Anything left behind is considered suspicious. The cleanse is seen as an act of spiritual renewal as much as bodily relief. In a world where everyone believes the soul and the stomach are connected, a purge is the closest you'll get to hitting the reset button. But don't think purging is a private affair. Your neighbor swears by a monthly cleanse and insists on sharing the details. Too many details. The priests recommend a spiritual component. Fasting, prayer, and reciting a hymn to cleanse your car or soul along with your insides. Sometimes you're instructed to write your worries on a scrap of papyrus, burn it, and scatter the ashes to the wind while chugging your favorite herbal remedy. Trust me, Sim says it's good for the heart and the lower back. If the castor oil doesn't do the trick, there's always a backup plan. Dried figs, roasted barley, and even the occasional pomegranate are prescribed. sometimes with a sprinkle of sour milk for extra cleansing power. It's not gourmet cuisine, but in ancient Egypt, regularity is next to godliness. Your grandmother offers her own recipe, which involves chewing raw leeks and muttering about the youth today, but you politely decline. Of course, some folks take things a little too far. The papyri includes stories of the great festival cleanses when everyone in town lines up for a group purge, turning the banks of the Nile into something between a health retreat and a minor natural disaster. Healers are there passing out herbs and encouragement. Priests chant blessings and sprinkle holy water, presumably to keep everyone's dignity afloat. For the upper classes, there are luxury options cleansing with imported dates, rare spices, and specially blessed water brought from a holy spring. But most people rely on what's available: castor oil, figs, and hope. Everyone knows someone who tried an extreme purge and regretted it. But just as many swear by its miraculous results. You're not truly clean, your aunt says, until you've emptied both your conscience and your colon. By evening, the cleanse is over, your stomach is quiet, and your spirit somehow feels lighter. Maybe it's the purging. Maybe it's the relief of knowing tomorrow you'll eat normal food again. Or maybe deep down you just like the idea that a little chaos can lead to clarity. In ancient Egypt, a good purge is more than medicine. It's a ritual, a confession, and on a good day, a reset for body and soul. Just remember to thank Sem, and maybe invest in extra papyrus for next time. There are days in ancient Egypt when the only thing heavier than your eyelids is the loaf of bread you had for breakfast. Maybe you spent the night chasing dreams through the underworld. Or maybe you just pulled an all-nighter weaving baskets for the local temple. Either way, you wake up feeling as limp as a sun-dried fish and realize much too late that you're expected at work before Ara even finishes his first circuit across the sky. This is not a society with coffee shops or drive-through espresso. Here, you need to get creative. That's where the ancient art of aromatic stimulation comes into play. Forget your morning latte. It's time for a dose of ancient Egyptian smelling salts guaranteed to jolt your senses and with luck your spirit. You roll out of bed, wander through your home, and immediately start looking for something, anything that'll snap you awake. Enter Sinab, the apothecary, always up before dawn, always ready with a remedy. He offers you a tiny linen pouch filled with natron crushed mint and a sprinkle of MYR. Wave this under your nose and breathe deeply, he instructs. The effect is immediate. The sharp mineral tang of natron makes your eyes water. The mint clears the fog from your brain, and the MYR leaves behind a subtle sweetness. You sneeze, then suddenly feel just a little more alive. But if you want to really impress your friends, or at least your supervisor, you need something more dramatic. That's where frankincense comes in. Sacred, smoky, and imported from lands so far away they might as well be magical. Frankincense is the stimulant of choice for priests, scribes, and anyone else who needs to stay alert during a 3-hour ritual. A pinch tossed on the coals fills the room with a crisp, piney fragrance, strong enough to wake even the sleepiest apprentice. Priests use frankincense for more than just ceremonies. In the morning, they waft it through the temple halls, believing it not only wakes up the body, but also sharpens the mind for communion with the gods. For the average person, inhaling frankincense is a secret weapon good for drowsiness, dizziness, and the kind of mental fog that makes you forget where you put your sandals. Just a little, the priest warns, or you'll be awake for days. Not all stimulants are smoke and mirrors. Egyptians are keen on chewing fresh mint leaves, anise seeds, even a little bit of cinnamon bark for those who can afford it. Your grandmother insists nothing beats a mouthful of dried papyrus root for keeping the senses sharp, though you suspect she's just trying to keep you too busy to complain. These snacks do double duty, perking you up and making your breath less hazardous to passers-by. Sometimes the village healer gets creative. On sluggish afternoons, she prescribes a blend of sour wine and herbs served cold. It'll make your heart beat faster, she claims. And she's not wrong. Whether from the shock or the taste is anyone's guess. Students prepping for exams. Yes, even in ancient Egypt, there are exams passed around pouches of peppercorns, biting them for bursts of energy and a touch of courage. Of course, not all ancient stimulants are foolproof. There's always the risk of sneezing your way through a religious service or accidentally getting frankincense in your eye and seeing stars that have nothing to do with astronomy. But like every medical adventure in Egypt, it's as much about hope as it is about results. As the day wears on, you realize you've made it through. Maybe it was a natron, maybe the frankincense, or maybe just the thought of Sineb's proud grin when you manage to stay awake during morning roll call. In ancient Egypt, the right scent can wake the dead, or at least make the living a little less zombie-like. So, next time you're dragging yourself out of bed, remember, all it takes is a whiff of ancient magic and a willingness to sneeze for greatness. Wake up, smell the frankincense, and conquer your day, one sniff at a time. In ancient Egypt, house cleaning is about more than just sweeping out the sand and relocating the occasional wayward goat. Sometimes, what your home really needs is a good old-fashioned spiritual deep clean, a smoky ritual known as fumigation therapy. Forget opening a window and hoping for the best. Here you drive out not just dust and musty odor, but evil spirits, bad luck, and at least half the flies try to take up residence in your soup. The day starts with a sneeze. Maybe your nose is itching. Maybe you're convinced the house feels a little off. The cats are restless. The kids are cranky. And your neighbor swears he saw a shadow move in your granary. Clearly, it's time for intervention. You summon Sineb, the apothecary, and the village priest. Because nothing says urgent domestic crisis like needing both a healer and someone who can recite curses in 3 dialects. Sineb arrives with a basket of dried herbs and resins. Frankincense, myrrh, sage, and a little mystery blend he claims came from a secret priestess in Memphis. The priest brings an incense burner shaped like a tiny hippo and an impressive collection of ceremonial fans. We'll smoke them out, he announces, and you're not sure if he means the spirits or the children hiding from chores. The process begins with every window and door tightly shut, because obviously you don't want the evil to escape and bother your neighbors. Sineb sprinkles the herbs on hot coals, releasing clouds of aromatic smoke that fill every corner, crevice, and crack. The priest chants prayers and blessings, occasionally switching to what sounds suspiciously like idle gossip about the last family who skipped their annual fumigation. You're instructed to walk the perimeter of the house, waving a fan and reciting a charm. Out with the bad, in with the good. Please stop coughing. I promise I'll sweep more often. The smoke is thick and eye-watering. Your nose runs, your eyes sting, but your heart is strangely light. And your grandmother claims she hasn't felt this healthy since before the last Nile flood. Fumigation therapy is equal parts practical and magical. The burning herbs, especially frankincense and myrrh, actually do sanitize the air and repel pests. The Egyptians figured out long ago that a smoky house was less likely to play host to mold, flies, and things best left unmentioned. But the ceremony is just as important. The priest insists that smoke drives out demons and stubborn misfortune, clearing the way for better dreams, happier homes, and a slightly more tolerable in-law visit. You learn that this isn't just a once-a-year affair. Fumigation happens whenever things feel off. After illness, before a big festival, or any time a neighbor claims to have heard jackal footsteps outside the window at midnight. It's also the go-to for bad luck in love, suspicious animal behavior, or when the bread won't rise and you suspect supernatural sabotage. Of course, some in the village are skeptical. The scribe points out that the only thing proven to leave during fumigation is his will to stay indoors. But for most, the ritual works. You breathe easier eventually, and the cats settle down, purring in smoky contentment. The kids emerge from their hiding places, blinking like little hippos, and your home feels, if not cleaner, then at least more peaceful. By sunset, the smoke is cleared. The priest ties a protective amulet above your door. Sinab offers a cup of honey-sweetened water to soothe your throat, and everyone agrees the house is lighter. Even the neighbor admits he hasn't seen a single shadow since the ceremony. So, when your own home feels heavy or you need to clear the air, literally or spiritually, remember the Egyptians' wisdom. Sometimes a good smoke out is all it takes to banish bad vibes, evil spirits, and a stubborn sinus headache. In Egypt, it's not clean until it smells like a priest's laundry day. Medicine in ancient Egypt isn't just about plants, roots, and mysterious blue flowers. No, when it comes to health, the ancient Egyptians truly believe in using every tool the gods have provided, which in this case means almost every animal in the neighborhood. If it walks, flies, swims, or just happens to wander too close to your kitchen, it's a candidate for the next great cure. Welcome to the world of animal remedies, a pharmacy with hooves, wings, and the occasional side of attitude. Let's start with the classics. Milk, for example, is more than just a beverage. Fresh goat or cow's milk is prescribed for stomach upsets, mixed into soothing skin balms, and occasionally used as a rinse for irritated eyes. The logic is simple. If it's good enough to grow a baby animal, surely it must restore human strength. Egyptian mothers swear by it. Doctors nod approvingly. And the village cat spends most of its time plotting how to steal the leftovers. But it's not just the milk. Fat, yes, animal fat is a cornerstone of ancient healing. Rendered goose fat is massaged into sore joints and aching backs. Hip-hop fat collected at considerable personal risk is used in special ointments for everything from cracked heels to hair loss. Sinab, your ever-resourceful apothecary, claims that a dab of sheep fat behind the ears will ward off chills and impress visiting relatives. You're not sure about the science, but your skin is definitely softer. Even more exotic remedies are in play. Snake skin, dried and ground, is added to potions for treating mysterious fevers. Crocodile oil applied in thin layers is said to heal wounds, and when mixed with herbs, keep away evil spirits. Mouse paste, don't ask what's in it, and definitely don't watch it being made, is rumored to cure stubborn rashes and, if nothing else, teach you a new appreciation for ordinary itching. Animal bones are ground into powder and sprinkled into drinks or pig uses for bone strength. Fish scales find their way into ointments for shiny hair. There's even a scroll that recommends placing a frog on the belly of a feverish child to draw out the heat. The frog, presumably, is less enthusiastic about this role. Honey, of course, is the MVP, so omnipresent that you sometimes forget it's made by an animal. Mixed with fat, milk, or nearly anything else, honey turns basic remedies into superstars. And if you're especially unlucky, there's always the ancient remedy of roasted lizard, allegedly good for coughs, though most people would rather just stay sick. Not all animal remedies are physical. Some are spiritual. Wearing a tooth from a crocodile or a feather from sacred ibis is said to bring health and ward off danger. Priests sometimes include animal parts in ritual spells, tucking a bit of fur or bone into amulets to boost their power. You've heard stories of cat whiskers hidden in love charms, though you suspect the cats are in on the scam. If you think some of these treatments sound odd, you're not alone. Even in ancient Egypt, skeptics exist. The village scribe raises an eyebrow at the mention of mouse paste, and the baker refuses to use hippo fat, claiming it tastes like regret. Still, when everyone else swears by goose fat for joint pain, you figure it's worth a try, especially if it comes with a complimentary slice of bread. There are warnings, of course. Not every animal cure is safe or pleasant. Too much lizard powder can cause wild dreams. And anyone who's ever tried to collect hippo fat learns quickly that some medicines come at a price. But for the Egyptians, the world is full of cures if you're willing to get creative and a little bit brave. So the next time you reach for a bottle of modern lotion or pop a chewable vitamin, remember the original animal remedies. Milk for healing, fat for strength, and just a touch of frog for luck. In ancient Egypt, every creature is a potential cure, and every cure is a story worth telling. In ancient Egypt, moderation is an admirable concept, one that sounds good in theory, but often fails in the face of daily reality. It's easy to imagine your ancestors living simple, balanced lives, but spend enough time along the Nile, and you'll realize too much of a good thing is practically a national pastime. From poppy-laced painkillers to sweet sticky date wine, Egypt's menu of remedies and indulgences is as long as the Nile and about as winding. The story always starts innocently. You have a toothache, so you chew some willow bark. Your joints ache, so you rub on hippo fat. You're nervous before a festival, so you accept a cup or 3 of beer mixed with blue lotus. One sip leads to another. The line between therapeutic dose and unexpected party is thin, and nobody's writing warning labels on their pottery. You're just following the advice of Sinab the apothecary, who never once mentions the phrase, "Take only as directed." Then before you know it, you're the person everyone is quietly gossiping about. Maybe you visit Sinab a little too often, asking for just one more vial of poppy resin. For the pain, of course. The local priest notices you've developed a certain dreamy look in your eye at morning prayers. You start showing up at village feasts with your own personal supply of blue lotus. For sharing, you say, but somehow your cup is always full. The Egyptians are not blind to this pattern. The medical papyri, full of optimism and warnings, occasionally break from their recipes to offer advice. Too much of this may cause strange visions. Or beware the man who laughs at nothing after the 3rd cup. There are stories about scribes who spent a week believing they were her ants, priests who wandered into the river and tried to preach to the fish. In one particularly memorable case of a grandmother who, after a dose of poppy, declared herself the reincarnation of Hathor and tried to bless the bread for an entire festival. Addiction isn't just about plants and potions. Even beer, Egypt's universal medicine, can become a slippery slope. The line between daily nourishment and drowsy detour in the marketplace is a blurry one. The village children learn early to steer clear of Uncle Tefnut when he's on his 3rd mug before noon. Meanwhile, the local healer quietly switches out the beer for watered-down barley water, just for variety, she claims. But everyone knows better. And yet there's little judgment, only gentle teasing and a quiet agreement to look out for one another when the signs of too much show up. Slurred hymns, unexpected naps in the temple courtyard, or the sudden urge to debate crocodiles. There's always someone nearby with a cup of honey-sweetened water and a sympathetic smile. The priest might offer a protective amulet. Sem might suggest a restorative fast and a few days of bland bread. Of course, there are ancient interventions. Sometimes a subtle exchange of real medicine for a harmless placebo. Sometimes a stern but loving chat from your grandmother. The message is clear. In Egypt, life is to be enjoyed, but not at the expense of your place in the community or your ability to find your way home after dark. The curse of addiction is as old as the cures themselves. Egyptians knew that everything, even the gifts of the gods, can turn against you if you're not careful. A little poppy brings relief. A little more brings confusion. Too much, and you wake up thinking you're in the afterlife, only to discover you're late for work. So next time you reach for your favorite remedy, take a lesson from the Nile. Let flow, but don't let it flood. In ancient Egypt, balance isn't just a virtue, it's survival. And sometimes a little restraint is the greatest medicine of all. So tonight, as you drift off in your clean, quiet bed with modern medicine safely tucked in your bathroom cabinet and absolutely zero crocodile dung in sight, take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come. You don't have to drink poppy juice to numb your toothache Or trust your neighbor's cousin's friend to diagnose your mysterious rash with a handful of willow twigs and a prayer to Thoth. You can walk into a pharmacy without being handed blue lotus and a stern warning about side effects involving spontaneous visions of the afterlife. Spare a sleepy thought for the ancient Egyptians, pioneers of medical trial and error, champions of creative prescriptions, and survivors of a world where the cure was often as questionable as the disease. They lived through heat, sandstorms, and mosquito bites with only honey, hope, and the occasional dab of hippo fat to keep them going. Their resilience wasn't just legendary. It was everyday life. Remember, history is full of weird remedies, stubborn hope, and people just trying to make it through the day without accidentally summoning a demon or falling asleep on a heated rock. We honor them not just for their innovations, but for their ability to keep laughing, inventing, and surviving, sometimes with nothing more than a good spell and a brave face. So tonight, as you settle in, and your room fills with the gentle white noise of a fan, not frankincense smoke, give thanks for modern comfort, science, and the fact that your dreams are probably not being monitored by a priest with a papyrus and an attitude. Because history may be full of wild medicine, but it's also proof that people are stubborn, imaginative, and just a little bit ridiculous. Sleep well, dream easy, and maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the ancestors who walked so we could nap in peace.